The girl who silenced kings. The question was not a question. It was a weapon, honed to a razor's edge and delivered with the casual cruelty of a king. "I'm sorry. Who let you in?" The voice belonged to Julian Crestwood IV, the undisputed prince of the Yale National Debate Invitational. Tall, with hair the color of old money, and a navy blazer that probably cost more than a month's rent back home. He was a living portrait of inherited confidence. A lazy, dismissive smirk played on his lips as he looked down his nose at the girl hovering near the entrance of the grand lecture hall. "And hey, before we dive in, if you love stories about resilience underdogs and moments that shake the system, hit that subscribe button and help us reach our first 1,000 subscribers. Your support keeps these powerful stories coming week after week." That girl was Ilara Vance, 17 years old, from a part of New Orleans the tourist maps conveniently forgot. Ilara felt less like a competitor and more like a ghost who'd wandered into the wrong haunting. Her sneakers were worn, her blazer a thrift store find, and her accent was a slow, sweet drawl that felt thick and clumsy in the crisp, clipped air of the Ivy League. She clutched a battered notebook to her chest, a shield against the whispers that flew around her like tiny venomous darts. "Is she on the list? Admissions must have made a mistake. I thought this was an invitational, not a charity case." Ilara heard them all. She kept her eyes fixed on the front of the room, where the tournament director, Professor Evelyn Reed, stood like a statue carved from ice. Reed was a legend, known for her brutal critiques and an impenetrable demeanor. Her gaze swept the room, a brief, dismissive flicker landing on Ilara before moving on, registering her presence and, it seemed, her profound lack of pedigree. The first day was a blur of polished handshakes and academic peacocking. Students from Exeter and Andover compared resumes like battle scars. Ilara stood alone, tracing the worn cover of her notebook. Its pages were a sanctuary, filled with handwritten arguments, rebuttal strategies, and notes her mother had helped her brainstorm after long shifts at the diner. Her mother's voice was an anchor in her mind. "You don't have to outdress them, baby. You just have to outthink them." Julian's voice boomed again, aiming for the whole room. "Professor, are we taking community service volunteers this year?" Laughter rippled through his circle of acolytes. The burn of shame crept up Ilara's neck, hot and fierce. Before she could wither, Professor Reed's voice cut through the air, sharp as snapping ice. "That's quite enough, Mr. Crestwood." The room fell silent. Julian gave a theatrical bow, a smirk still playing on his lips. The damage was done. The next morning, the Yale debate hall felt like a cathedral built to intimidate. Sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air above rows of polished mahogany. Ilara's name was listed last on the speaker roster, the slot reserved for afterthoughts. The first topic was announced resolved. The role of socioeconomic background in university admissions should be minimized. The irony was so thick, Ilara could taste it. Julian, of course, was first. He commanded the stage, his voice a flawless instrument. He wove statistics with charming anecdotes, his arguments a fortress of privilege. The judges smiled. Speaker after speaker followed, each more polished than the last. Finally, her name was called, an awkward echo in the cavernous hall. Elara Vance, representing New Orleans Southeast Regional. Every step to the podium was a battle. She passed rows of smirking faces, amused stares, and the cold, unreadable gaze of Professor Reed. Her fingers trembled as she placed her notebook on the lectern. She took a breath, adjusted the microphone, and began. Her opening was quiet, but it landed like a stone in a silent pool. Before I begin, I'd like to thank Yale for this invitation, even if some people in this room believe it was a mistake. A ripple of shock went through the crowd. She didn't pause. She didn't have the soaring oratory of Julian, but she had something he could never possess: truth. She spoke of systemic bias, of schools in her neighborhood without functioning air conditioning, let alone debate programs. She spoke not of statistics, but of the people behind them. Some of us, she said, her eyes locking with Julian's, weren't born with legacy papers waiting in a file. Some of us have to earn every single invitation we receive, including this one, she concluded, her voice ringing with a conviction that defied argument. This isn't about charity. It's about ensuring the next generation of leaders doesn't just look like the last. The silence that followed was heavy, charged. Then, applause. Not a storm, but a slow gathering rain. It was real. As she passed Julian, he muttered, "Cute story. Let's see if it gets you anywhere." It did. The rankings were posted that afternoon. Elara Vance ranked 12. She had survived. The next round's topic was a trap-resolved affirmative action policies do more harm than good. They were asking her to argue against the very tool her detractors assumed was the only reason she was there. Doubt gnawed at her, a cold, creeping thing. What if they're right? Then her phone buzzed. A text from her mom. "Remember, baby, you never needed anyone's permission to be great." A fresh wave of determination washed over her. She would not just prepare. She would become an expert on every side of the argument. If they wanted to trap her, she would know every inch of the cage. The next day, Julian delivered a smug, thinly veiled attack on social engineering. When Elara's turn came, she walked to the podium with a newfound steel in her spine. "This conversation isn't about lowering standards," she began, her voice calm and clear. "It's about recognizing the playing field has never been level." She dismantled the myth of pure meritocracy, citing data on legacy admissions and the advantages of private tutors and elite prep schools. She then delivered the finishing blow. "Ask yourselves," she said, her gaze sweeping the room, "how many of us would be sitting in this hall today without a head start we didn't earn?" The room shifted uncomfortably. Julian's smirk had vanished. The applause was louder this time, more certain. Professor Reed's eyes followed Alara back to her seat, and for the first time, there was a flicker of something other than indifference in them recognition. The sabotage came the night before the quarterfinals. An official-looking email landed in her inbox. Subject urgent topic revision. It announced a last-minute change. Panic seized her. She scrapped her prep and worked through the night on the new topic, falling asleep at her desk as dawn threatened the sky. The next morning, Professor Reed stopped her at the door. "Miss Vance, your round begins in 5 minutes. Where have you been?" "Preparing for the topic change," Alara stammered, showing her the email. Professor Reed's eyes narrowed. "This is not from us," she said, her voice clipped. "This is fake. The topic is, and has always been, technology has eroded authentic human communication." The floor fell away. Across the room, she saw Julian. He caught her eye and mouthed a single silent word. "Oops." She had no notes, no research, no time. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. "You didn't come this far to fold now." With trembling hands, she grabbed a blank notepad and a pen. When her name was called, she walked to the stage on pure, unadulterated nerve. She spoke not from research, but from the heart. She talked about friendships warped by social media, family dinners silenced by glowing screens, and a room full of brilliant minds more interested in their online status than the person sitting next to them. It wasn't polished. It was raw, real, and utterly powerful. She made it to the semifinals. The final showdown was inevitable. Alara Vance versus Julian Crestwood fourth. The auditorium was packed. The topic felt like destiny. Resolved, traditional institutions remain the best guardians of academic integrity. Julian went first, delivering a masterful defense of Yale and its traditions, a world of honor and intellectual purity. Then it was Alara's turn. She walked to the podium and looked out at the sea of faces. "We are here today to debate who guards integrity," she began, her voice steady. "And I stand before you as living proof that sometimes the guardians are the very ones who try to silence the voices that challenge them." A gasp rippled through the audience. Without naming names, she told the story of the fake email. She wove a narrative of gatekeeping, of how institutions don't just fail to be inclusive, but sometimes actively work to exclude. Integrity isn't about protecting traditions that are comfortable. Her voice soared, filling the hall. It's about having the courage to dismantle the ones that are unjust. If these institutions were flawless, I wouldn't have had to survive sabotage just to stand on this stage today. The words hung in the air, an undeniable indictment. Julian's confident mask shattered. He looked flustered, defensive. His rebuttal was weak, his composure gone. When it was over, the room erupted. It was a standing ovation. Backstage, waiting for the verdict, Julian wouldn't meet her eye. Professor Reed emerged, her face a neutral mask. "They are ready." The moderator stood holding a sealed envelope. A lifetime seemed to pass. "The winner of the Yale National Invitational is—" He paused, letting the tension build. "Ilara Vance." The world froze for a second, then exploded in sound. Ilara stood in stunned silence. Through the crowd, she saw Julian grab his bag and vanish through a side door, a king dethroned. Professor Reed approached, a small, genuine smile finally breaking through her icy exterior. "Well done, Miss Vance," she said, extending a hand. "You didn't just win a debate. You remade the room." Later that evening, as Ilara sat alone on the stone steps, Professor Reed found her. "The administration discovered who sent the email," she said quietly. "It was Julian Crestwood. His competitive career is over." Ilara nodded slowly, a sense of quiet justice settling over her. The battle was won. Weeks later, back on her front porch in New Orleans, an envelope arrived. Inside was an offer for a full scholarship to Yale's pre-college program, with a handwritten note from Professor Reed. It read simply, "We're just getting started. Can't wait to see how far you'll go." Ilara smiled, her heart full. The girl from the forgotten corner of the map had not only found her voice, she had proven that a single, true voice was powerful enough to silence kings and build a new world in their place.